In a busy warehouse, a worker pushing a manual pallet jack enters an aisle. From the opposite direction, a forklift operator turns the corner, their attention focused elsewhere. The operator fails to see the pedestrian directly in their path and collides with them, knocking the person to the floor. This incident underscores the danger of blind corners. Convex mirrors, audible alarms on vehicles, and strictly enforced pedestrian walkways are vital for preventing such collisions. At a building facade, two men are working on a multi-level rolling scaffold. One worker is positioned on the top platform, attending to his tasks, while his partner is on the ground below. The worker at the base decides to reposition the scaffold. Instead of ensuring his colleague descends first, he begins to push the entire tall structure along the uneven sidewalk. The scaffold immediately becomes unstable, rocking back and forth precariously. He continues to push until the structure's center of gravity shifts too far, causing it to topple over completely. It crashes down with immense force, throwing the worker from the top platform onto the hard pavement below. This incident is a catastrophic failure of fundamental safety rules. Scaffolding must always be erected on solid, level ground and must never, under any circumstances, be moved while workers are on it. This dangerous shortcut resulted in a severe and easily avoidable accident. Inside a fenced-off automated work cell, a worker stands dangerously close to an active robotic arm. The large robot, programmed to move components, makes a sudden, swift movement toward the man. It mistakes the worker for a part, grabbing him by the head and violently slamming him into a stack of materials. This is precisely why safety cages and light curtains exist. No worker should ever enter the operational envelope of a robot without engaging full lockout-tagout procedures. In a nighttime loading bay, a truck driver stands near the back of his trailer as a forklift approaches with a pallet. The forklift operator, seemingly unaware of the driver's presence, drives forward without slowing down. The operator pins the driver between the powerful machine and the trailer, crushing him instantly. This devastating incident highlights the absolute need for clear communication and situational awareness. Forklift operators must always establish eye contact with pedestrians in their vicinity, and ground personnel should never place themselves in a potential crush zone. A mechanic crouches directly over a large truck tire while inflating it. Without any warning, the tire's structural integrity fails, resulting in a massive explosion. The sheer force of the blast launches the mechanic violently into the air. When inflating high-pressure tires, always use a safety inflation cage and a clip-on chuck with a long hose to maintain a safe distance. At a busy port, workers are loading a flatbed truck near the water's edge. A forklift operator, after placing a load, suddenly accelerates forward at high speed instead of reversing. The machine plunges off the pier, landing directly on a worker standing below and pushing him into the water. This appears to be a tragic case of pedal misapplication. In complex environments, operators must remain hyper-vigilant. Maintaining clear safety zones for pedestrians is essential to provide an escape route in case of operator error. In a factory setting, a worker operates a large rolling press. He reaches over the active machine, likely to clear a jam or adjust the material being fed into it. His arm gets caught in the powerful intake rollers, and in a horrific instant, he is pulled completely into the machine. This demonstrates the absolute necessity of proper machine guarding. All moving parts and pinch points must be covered. For any adjustments or maintenance, a complete lockout-tagout procedure must be performed to de-energize the equipment. In a mining tunnel, a worker pushes a heavy cart toward an elevator shaft. He opens the protective gate and, without verifying that the elevator car is actually there, pushes the cart into the void. He and the cart plummet down the open shaft. Safety interlocks that prevent gates from opening unless the elevator is present are critical. This tragic assumption highlights the rule to always look and confirm before you proceed. An elderly woman stands near the open rear door of a city bus. Before she is safely clear of the vehicle, the bus driver begins to pull away from the curb. The sudden movement causes the woman to lose her balance and fall backward, striking her head hard on the pavement. The bus continues on its route, the driver apparently unaware of what has just happened. This highlights a critical failure of the driver to ensure all passengers are safely clear of the bus before proceeding. Checking mirrors and waiting for passengers to be on the curb is essential to prevent these falls. On a dirt road at a construction or drilling site, two workers stand beside their small utility truck. Uphill and behind them, a large front-end loader begins to reverse. The operator fails to see the vehicle and workers in their massive blind spot. The loader continues backwards, completely running over and crushing the small truck and the two workers beneath it, who had no chance to escape. This devastating accident shows a complete breakdown of sight awareness. Heavy equipment operators must have a clear 360-degree view or use a spotter before moving, and workers on foot must never linger in the blind spots of large machinery. In a car service bay, a mechanic works under the open hood of a car being converted to run on compressed gas. Without warning, the red gas cylinder inside the engine compartment fails catastrophically. It shoots out of the car like a rocket, ricochets off the ground, and triggers a massive fiery explosion that engulfs a nearby vehicle. Working with compressed gas systems like LPG or CNG is extremely hazardous. This was likely a tank failure from damage or overpressurization, and all work on such systems requires specialized training to prevent an explosive decompression. A busy street market is set up dangerously close to a live railway line. As a long freight train passes through the area, a person standing too near the tracks is struck by the locomotive and pulled under the moving train cars. This dashcam footage captures a busy highway with congested traffic. A motorcyclist attempts to weave between lanes, trying to get ahead. The rider makes a critical error by trying to cut in front of a large tanker truck from the right side, placing them directly in the driver's significant blind spot. The truck, moving forward with traffic, collides with the unseen motorcycle, pulling the rider under its wheels. Riders must always assume they are invisible to truck drivers and avoid maneuvering in these dangerous no zones. On what appears to be a normal day, a high-angle security camera captures a street view in front of a multi-story building. Without any warning, the building's entire facade detaches and collapses in a massive cloud of dust and debris, crashing down onto the street and crushing the parked motorcycles below. This type of catastrophic structural failure points to severe issues like neglected maintenance or a potential gas leak, underscoring the necessity of regular building inspections. At a snowy construction site near an electrical substation, a mobile crane is lifting a load. Several workers are on the ground observing the operation. Suddenly, a catastrophic failure occurs. The crane's boom cannot handle the strain, buckles in the middle, and crashes down directly onto one of the workers below. This incident is the result of either overloading the crane or a critical metal fatigue failure. Load charts must be consulted before every lift to ensure the crane's capacity is not exceeded. On the flatbed of a truck, a worker prepares to cut the final metal band, securing a massive coil of sheet metal. He stands directly in front of it, a dangerously precarious position. As soon as he snips the band, the immense stored energy in the tightly wound coil is released instantly. The coil violently unspools with incredible force, throwing the man from the truck and pinning him underneath a heavy, whipping sheet of metal. This is a terrifying example of failing to respect stored energy. Coils like this are under extreme tension and must only be unbanded and unrolled using specialized equipment that can safely control the release of force. In a repair shop, a large box truck is raised on a two-post vehicle lift. A man casually walks underneath the elevated vehicle. The truck was clearly positioned improperly, with its center of gravity too far back. It suddenly tips backward, sliding off the lift arms and crashing to the floor, crushing the man beneath it. Lifting long or heavy vehicles requires perfect balancing. The vehicle's center of gravity must be correctly identified and centered on the lift to prevent a catastrophic tip-over like this. During a tractor pull competition, two powerful tractors are linked by a heavy chain surrounded by a crowd of onlookers. The driver of the red tractor begins to apply power. He gives it too much throttle, and the immense torque causes the tractor's front wheels to lift off the ground. In a matter of seconds, the vehicle rears up, flips completely backward, and the full weight of the machine crashes down on the operator's area, crushing him. Spectators rush in, but it's too late. Tractor pulls are inherently dangerous due to the high center of gravity and massive torque. All competition vehicles must be equipped with a certified rollover protective structure, ROPS, and drivers must be secured with safety harnesses. At a paper mill, several workers are on a narrow catwalk next to a massive machine with numerous exposed rollers. One worker in a yellow vest steps too close while trying to adjust something. Instantly, the powerful rollers grab him and pull him into the machinery between two large spinning drums. His co-workers are helpless to stop the immense force of the machine. This horrifying incident is a direct result of missing or inadequate machine guarding. All nip points and moving parts must be fully enclosed. No adjustments should ever be performed without a full lockout-tagout procedure. In what appears to be a dye works or processing facility, men are working around large ground-level vats filled with steaming, boiling liquid. The work area is wet, cluttered, and lacks any protective railings around the open vats. One worker brings a bucket to the edge of one vat. He pours the contents into the vat, triggering an immediate and violent eruption. A huge cloud of steam or a splash of boiling liquid erupts, knocking him off his feet and directly into the scalding contents. His co-workers react in a panic, rushing to his aid and desperately trying to pull him from the vat. This tragedy highlights multiple failures. First, the violent reaction suggests a dangerous chemical mix or adding a liquid to a much hotter one, causing it to flash boil. Second, the complete lack of guardrails around open vats of hazardous liquid is a critical safety violation. Inside another paper mill, a worker stands on a bench next to a machine with large rollers, attempting to manually feed a sheet of starter paper into the mechanism. This forces him to place his hands extremely close to the dangerous in-running nip point. As he guides the paper, his hand is caught by the rollers. The machine, designed to pull with immense force, relentlessly drags his arm and then his entire body into the spinning drums. A co-worker on an upper level sees the accident and frantically runs to an emergency stop button, but the damage is already done. Manually feeding material into live rollers is an exceptionally high-risk activity. This process should be automated or performed using specialized tools that keep the operator's hands far away from the nip points. On a sloped work site, a man is standing by a small pickup truck. Uphill from him, a large yellow front-end loader is parked, apparently unattended. With no operator in the cab, the loader's brakes fail or were never set. It begins to roll silently backward down the incline. The man has no time to react as the multi-ton machine gains speed, smashes into the pickup truck, and runs him over completely. This is a fundamental failure of securing heavy equipment. Any vehicle parked on an incline must have its parking brake fully engaged and its wheels chocked. A bus driver is crouched directly in front of a large bus tire, which appears to be flat. He seems to be inflating it without any protective equipment. Without warning, the tire's sidewall fails catastrophically. The sudden release of high-pressure air is explosive. The blast hurls the heavy tire and its multi-piece rim assembly directly at the driver, killing him instantly. Another man is thrown back by the force. The explosive force of a large tire is equivalent to a bomb. Inflating these tires must be done inside a reinforced safety cage. This cage contains the components in case of a failure, allowing the mechanic to stand a safe distance away. In a narrow service bay, a mechanic is working at the front of a classic pickup truck, bent over near the wall. Another person gets into the driver's seat. Instead of starting the engine in neutral or park, the driver apparently engages a gear. The truck lurches forward violently, pinning the mechanic's body between the vehicle's bumper and the solid wall. Others in the shop immediately rush to try and push the truck back. This is a classic line of fire accident. Never position your body between a vehicle and a fixed object when someone is in the driver's seat. At a road paving site, several workers are present. One worker is standing on the fresh asphalt, his back turned to a large, yellow road roller. The roller operator begins to reverse, completely unaware of the worker in his path due to the machine's massive blind spots. The roller strikes the man from behind, knocking him down and slowly driving over him. Blind spots on heavy equipment are deadly. It is mandatory for operators to have a spotter to guide them during reversing maneuvers. Additionally, ground workers must maintain constant situational awareness and never turn their backs on moving machinery. 3 workers stand near a stack of heavy steel I-beams resting on supports. The stack appears to be poorly secured. One man begins to unhook a strap, and the loss of that support causes the entire pile to become unstable. The heavy beams slide off their supports and cascade to the ground, pinning one of the workers underneath. His colleagues desperately try to move the immensely heavy beams to free him. This demonstrates a critical failure in material storage. Heavy, unsecured loads are a constant hazard. They must be properly stacked, chocked, and secured, and bindings should only be removed when the load is stabilized by a lifting device. A woman in a lab coat stands in the lobby of a clinic as a visitor enters through a large, frameless glass door. As the visitor closes the door behind her, it suddenly detaches from its overhead pivot hinge. The massive sheet of tempered glass falls and explodes on impact with the floor, sending shards everywhere. The employee inside is startled, but manages to avoid the main impact. This type of failure points to improper installation or worn-out hardware. The fittings for heavy glass doors require regular inspection and maintenance to ensure they can safely support the weight. Inside a factory, one worker is bent over near a long textile machine. The worker's loose clothing gets caught on a low-profile rotating roller. He is instantly flipped and violently dragged into the machinery. This is another severe entanglement incident caused by an unguarded rotating part. Even seemingly slow-moving components can be incredibly dangerous. Machine guarding and prohibiting loose clothing are critical preventative measures that were ignored here. At a construction site, workers are guiding a crane-lifted concrete bucket into position. One man stands directly in the load's swing path to maneuver it by hand. The load shifts unexpectedly, striking him squarely in the head and knocking him to the ground unconscious. Suspended loads must only be guided using tag lines from a safe distance. Placing yourself in the path of a swinging load puts you at the mercy of physics, a risk no one should ever take. A worker guides a thick metal wire onto a large, rotating spooling machine. His gloved hand gets too close and is caught between the wire and the spool. The machine's torque instantly pulls him off his feet. slamming him against the frame as his arm is dragged into the mechanism. This type of entanglement happens in a split second. Guiding materials should be done with appropriate tools from a safe distance, and all rotating parts require proper guarding to prevent any possibility of contact. In a commercial bakery, a worker is cleaning around a massive industrial dough mixer while the safety cage is lifted up. As she bends down, a co-worker walks up to the machine and, without checking his surroundings, activates it. The powerful mixing hook starts to rotate, catching the woman and pulling her into the bowl. The other workers rush in panic to stop the machine and help their gravely injured colleague. This is a catastrophic failure to follow lockout-tagout procedures. The machine should have been completely de-energized and locked before any cleaning began. The safety guard was bypassed, and the operator failed to ensure the area was clear before starting the equipment. In a processing facility, a massive bulk bag of granular material is suspended from a hoist. A worker climbs onto a metal cart, positioning himself directly underneath the 1-ton bag to cut it open from the bottom. The moment he punctures the bag, the lifting loops fail, and the entire load collapses on top of him, burying him completely. His co-workers are forced into a desperate and lengthy rescue, digging through the material by hand to find him. This is a fatal mistake, born from ignoring the most fundamental rule of lifting: never work under a suspended load. The bag should have been securely placed in a proper discharging station before being opened. This tragic event demonstrates how a shortcut can lead to the ultimate price, leaving colleagues to deal with the horrifying aftermath of a decision that took only seconds to make. In a commercial kitchen, a deep fryer catches fire. A worker panics and throws a container of liquid, almost certainly water, onto the flames. This causes a violent eruption, spreading the grease fire. After the initial mistake, he reacts correctly by grabbing a fire extinguisher to put out the blaze. This is a crucial lesson. Never use water on a grease fire. Water vaporizes instantly, spreading burning oil. The proper response is to smother the fire with a lid, or use a Class K fire extinguisher specifically designed for kitchen fires. On an elevated platform at an industrial plant, workers are positioned near a large piece of equipment. One man handles a flexible hose connected to the system. Suddenly, a coupling fails, and the pressurized hose whips around, dousing him with a powerful jet of chemicals. He is immediately engulfed in a vapor cloud and collapses. This incident underscores the extreme danger of pressurized systems. Hoses and their fittings must undergo regular inspection for wear and be properly secured to prevent catastrophic failure. Appropriate PPE, including full-face shields and chemical-resistant suits, is non-negotiable. In a textile factory, a worker tends to a massive fabric winding machine. He reaches over the large, rapidly spinning roll to make an adjustment. In an instant, his arm is caught, and the machine's immense power pulls his entire body in, wrapping him violently within the roll of fabric. His co-workers rush to his aid, desperately trying to halt the machine. For over a minute, they struggle with the controls and attempt to manually reverse the powerful mechanism to free their trapped colleague. This horrific entanglement is a direct result of inadequate machine guarding. A protective barrier with an interlock switch would have shut the machine down. This also serves as a grim reminder to never reach over moving parts. The chaotic rescue highlights the need for clear and practiced emergency stop procedures for all heavy machinery. Inside a busy workshop or warehouse, employees are engaged in their daily tasks. Without warning, a violent explosion erupts in the middle of the workspace, sending a shockwave and debris flying in all directions. The likely culprit is a catastrophic failure of a pressurized gas cylinder, Such cylinders must be stored securely upright, chained in place, and kept away from heat sources or areas where they could suffer physical impact. In a vast warehouse, an operator drives an electric pallet jack down an aisle lined with towering storage racks. He appears to be inattentive or fatigued as the vehicle slowly veers to the right. It makes a seemingly minor impact with the base of a shelving upright. But that's all it takes. The collision triggers a devastating domino effect, bringing down the entire aisle of heavy shelving in a matter of seconds. The operator barely manages to run to safety as tons of product come crashing down. This shows why rack protectors are vital and, more importantly, that operators must remain alert at all times, as fatigue can have catastrophic consequences. A worker is feeding material into a green industrial rolling machine. He is sitting directly on the machine's frame, an incredibly dangerous position right next to the powerful intake rollers. As he guides the material, his hand gets caught. He is instantly pulled in and crushed by the machine. This fatal incident was entirely preventable. The machine had no guarding at its point of operation, a fundamental safety violation. Workers must never place themselves on or near moving machinery. Guards, light curtains, or two-hand controls are essential to prevent such tragedies. In a factory setting, a worker operates a large rolling press. As he guides material into the machine's intake, his hand is suddenly caught. He is violently and instantly pulled completely into the powerful rollers. This tragic incident highlights a critical lack of point-of-operation guarding. Safety interlocks, light curtains, or two-hand controls are essential safeguards to prevent such immediate and horrific accidents. From a high vantage point on a construction site, a crane is lifting a platform with 3 workers on it. Suddenly, the rigging gives way, and the platform violently tilts. In a cluttered workshop, a man works near a large machine with an exposed, rapidly rotating flywheel. He's wearing a loose, untucked shirt, a critical mistake around this type of equipment. As he moves past the machine, the back of his shirt is snagged by the flywheel. He is instantly whipped around with incredible violence, spinning in the air as the machine wraps his clothing tighter and tighter around the axle. His co-workers rush in a panic to shut off the power, but the momentum continues to spin him violently. This is a textbook example of why loose clothing is forbidden around rotating machinery. It can be grabbed in an instant, leading to horrific injuries or death. All flywheels and drive shafts must be properly guarded. This onboard footage from a city bus captures the driver navigating through traffic. A passenger stands near the front, talking on the phone. Without warning, a vehicle from the oncoming lane swerves directly into the bus's path, resulting in a devastating head-on collision. The impact is catastrophic, shattering the windshield and sending the passenger flying violently forward. The aftermath shows the complete destruction of the bus's front end. This is a brutal reminder of the immense forces involved in high-speed collisions and the importance of defensive driving and constant vigilance on the road. Inside a mobile MRI trailer, a technician is in the control room while an elderly patient using a metal walker is brought into the scanning room. As the patient gets close to the MRI machine, its powerful magnetic field suddenly activates, violently pulling the walker and the patient with it into the machine. This is a terrifying illustration of a fundamental MRI safety rule. No metallic objects are allowed near the machine while it is operational. Strict screening protocols are mandatory to prevent such a dangerous event. At a tire repair shop, a group of mechanics is gathered around a large truck tire that is being inflated. Without warning, the tire fails and explodes with devastating force. The blast wave throws the men violently in all directions. This type of catastrophic failure is a known risk with high-pressure tires. To prevent injury, such tires must always be inflated inside a reinforced safety cage, which is designed to contain the explosive force. An industrial worker performs hot work near large storage tanks. The sparks suddenly ignite flammable vapors in the area, causing a massive explosion. This highlights the critical need for hot work permits, which require testing the atmosphere for flammable gases and clearing the area of combustibles before starting. A brightly decorated truck becomes stuck while attempting to cross a set of railway tracks. Several people on the ground notice the impending danger as a train approaches at high speed. Despite their frantic attempts to signal, there is not enough time for the train to stop. The locomotive collides with the truck, obliterating it in an instant. This tragic incident is a stark reminder to never stop a vehicle on a railway crossing for any reason.
City Street. A passenger exits a parked car and steps directly into the path of oncoming traffic without looking. A moving car strikes him at speed. This tragic event serves as a basic but vital reminder.
At a car wash, a woman is cleaning her vehicle, which is parked on an inclined ramp without wheel chocks. The car suddenly begins to roll backward. The woman attempts to stop it, but is tragically caught and crushed between the moving vehicle and a wall. This incident underscores the absolute necessity of securing a vehicle on any incline. Always engage the parking brake and use wheel chocks to prevent unintended movement, especially when working around the vehicle. On a highway, a tanker truck begins emitting a thick cloud of orange smoke, signaling a dangerous chemical reaction. The driver pulls over, exits the cab, and climbs directly on top of the tanker to inspect the leak, exposing himself to the toxic fumes. Suddenly, the pressure builds, and a massive plume of gas erupts. When dealing with hazardous materials, the primary rule is to evacuate and establish a safe perimeter. Never approach a leaking or reacting chemical tanker. Immediately contact emergency services. What appears to be a dye works or processing facility. Men are working around large ground-level vats filled with steaming, boiling liquid. The work area is wet, cluttered, and lacks any protective railings around the open vats. One worker brings a bucket to the edge of one vat. He pours the contents into the vat, triggering an immediate and violent eruption. A huge cloud of steam or a splash of boiling liquid erupts, knocking him off his feet and directly into the scalding contents. His co-workers react in a panic, rushing to his aid and desperately trying to pull him from the vat. This tragedy highlights multiple failures. First, the violent reaction suggests a dangerous chemical mix or adding a liquid to a much hotter one, causing it to flash boil. Second, the complete lack of guardrails around open vats of hazardous liquid is a critical safety violation. Inside another paper mill, a worker stands on a bench next to a machine with large rollers, attempting to manually feed a sheet of starter paper into the mechanism. This forces him to place his hands extremely close to the dangerous in-running nip point. As he guides the paper, his hand is caught by the rollers. The machine, designed to pull with immense force, relentlessly drags his arm and then his entire body into the spinning drums. A co-worker on an upper level sees the accident and frantically runs to an emergency stop button, but the damage is already done. Manually feeding material into live rollers is an exceptionally high-risk activity. This process should be automated or performed using specialized tools that keep the operator's hands far away from the nip points. On a narrow city street, two men are walking next to a building. A third man on the sidewalk tries to warn them, but it's too late. High above, a poorly secured pallet of heavy bags, likely at a construction site, slips from its position. The entire load plummets to the ground, landing directly on top of the two pedestrians and burying them instantly. All overhead work, especially lifting operations, requires the area below to be completely cordoned off to prevent anyone from entering the drop zone. Inside a brightly lit beauty salon, clients are receiving treatments while an employee works at a shelf. The calm is shattered in an instant as a large truck, having lost control on the street outside, smashes through the glass storefront. The vehicle plows deep into the salon, sending debris flying and narrowly missing the terrified occupants who scramble for safety. This shocking incident is a reminder that even indoor spaces can be vulnerable to external traffic hazards, especially those located at street level. A person walks down a narrow alleyway between warehouse buildings. Behind them, a forklift carrying a load that obstructs the operator's forward view is traveling in the same direction. The operator, unable to see the pedestrian, continues forward and runs the person over. This is a primary rule of forklift safety. If your forward view is blocked by a load, you must travel in reverse. Using a horn at intersections and having designated pedestrian paths are also crucial measures to prevent this type of accident. At a lumber yard, a forklift operator attempts to lift a tall, heavy, and unstable stack of wooden panels. As the forks rise, the machine's center of gravity shifts forward, causing it to become dangerously unbalanced. The entire forklift tips forward, sending the massive load crashing down onto a nearby worker who is instantly pinned beneath the immense weight. This fatal error was caused by exceeding the forklift's rated load capacity. Operators must be trained to read and understand their vehicle's load chart and never attempt to lift a load that is too heavy or unstable. In a scrap metal recycling plant, a worker climbs into a massive baling press to clear a jam, placing himself in an extremely dangerous position. While he is inside, an excavator operator working nearby drops a load of scrap, startling the man. As he tries to get out, the press unexpectedly begins its compression cycle. The powerful hydraulic ram activates, trapping and crushing the man inside the machine before he can escape. This is a horrifying failure of lockout, tag-out procedures. Before any worker enters a machine for maintenance, all energy sources must be completely shut off and locked to prevent accidental activation. This procedure would have saved his life. In a cramped warehouse aisle, two employees stand talking, oblivious to the high-reach forklift operating behind them. The operator lifts a pallet high into the racking, but the load is unbalanced. The entire pallet of goods slides off the forks and falls onto the workers below. Pedestrians must always be aware of their surroundings and never stand under a suspended load. Inside an automated factory, a worker leans over a conveyor, putting himself in the path of a robotic arm. The machine activates unexpectedly, striking the man. As colleagues rush to help, a second robot further down the line malfunctions, swinging its arm and hitting another worker. This chain reaction points to a systemic failure of the safety systems. Proper light curtains, pressure mats, or sensors should automatically shut down all robots in a zone the moment a human enters. At a gas station, an attendant is crouched down, cleaning a spill. The driver of a white SUV, who had just been refueling, gets into their vehicle and pulls away, without checking their blind spots. The car turns directly into the low-profile attendant, knocking him over and dragging him several feet before stopping. This shows the critical importance of situational awareness for both drivers and workers. Drivers must be vigilant in pedestrian-heavy areas, while ground workers should use cones to create a visible safety barrier around their immediate workspace. At a recycling facility, a man is using a long pole to push material into a large industrial shredder. He is leaning far over the machine's opening in a precarious position. Another worker approaches from behind and throws more material into the shredder's hopper. This sudden influx causes the machine to violently grab the first worker's pole, pulling him in after it. This horrific accident was caused by a complete lack of machine guarding and poor communication between workers. At a factory, a man walks through an open area below a mezzanine. Without warning, a massive, heavy roll of fabric falls from the level above, landing directly on top of him. This incident highlights the absolute importance of securing all materials stored at height, using tow boards, netting, or other barriers to prevent objects from falling. In a warehouse, a forklift operator places a crate on a truck. He then gets off the forklift, leaving it running with the forks raised and, most importantly, without setting the parking brake. As he walks in front of the machine to adjust the load, the forklift begins to roll forward on the slight incline. He is trapped and crushed between the multi-ton vehicle and the truck. This fatal accident was caused by ignoring the most fundamental rule of forklift safety. Before dismounting, always lower the forks, set the parking brake, and put the machine in neutral. In a busy industrial yard, a forklift operator attempts the difficult task of lifting a large, heavy, and awkwardly shaped pipe flange with only one fork. The load is dangerously unstable and severely off-center from the start. As the operator raises the mast, the forklift's center of gravity shifts dramatically. In a matter of seconds, the machine loses its balance and tips over sideways, trapping and crushing the operator in the cab underneath its immense weight. This tragic incident was caused by the improper lifting of an unbalanced and oversized load, far exceeding the forklift's rated capacity and stability. Such an object should have been moved using appropriate rigging with multiple attachment points and a crane, not a forklift, to prevent a catastrophic tip-over. During a circus performance in front of a live audience, an acrobat begins to ride a bicycle across a high wire. Midway through the act, the performer suddenly loses balance. Both he and the bicycle plummet to the hard stage below. High wire acts are incredibly dangerous, and this incident underscores the risk. The clear lack of a safety net or a personal fall arrest harness connected to a safety line made this fall unsurvivable. A young girl is seen in a garage, playing near a partially open metal roll-up door. She curiously reaches up and begins to pull the heavy door downward. Suddenly, the door's counterbalancing spring mechanism appears to fail catastrophically. The heavy door breaks free and free falls with tremendous speed and force, slamming shut and trapping the child underneath in an instant. This is a heartbreaking and preventable tragedy. Heavy, spring-loaded doors require regular inspection and maintenance to ensure their safety mechanisms are fully functional. Two pedestrians are standing on the very edge of a busy roadway, perilously close to passing traffic. A white bus approaches, and without slowing, it strikes both individuals, throwing them violently into the air. Standing this close to an active traffic lane leaves absolutely no margin for error or driver distraction. On a highway, a man is riding his motorcycle when a panicked bull suddenly runs into his path. The collision knocks the rider from his bike, throwing him directly into the lane of an oncoming truck, leaving no time for the truck driver to stop. An elderly woman attempts to cross a road while pulling a large wheeled trash can behind her. As she steps into the street, she moves directly into the path of an oncoming white SUV. The driver doesn't appear to see her, and the vehicle strikes her without slowing down. Inside a tire repair shop, two mechanics work on a large, unmounted tractor tire. As they attempt to inflate it without proper safety equipment, the tire's internal pressure builds to a critical point. It explodes with catastrophic force, creating a powerful concussive blast that throws the men. Inflating large tires is extremely dangerous due to the immense stored energy and must always be done inside a reinforced steel safety cage. At a railroad crossing, a scooter with two riders waits as the warning gates are down. Growing impatient, the driver decides to maneuver around the safety barrier and cross the tracks. As they enter the crossing, a train appears at high speed, giving them no chance to escape the collision. Railroad crossing gates and warning signals are absolute safety measures and must always be obeyed. Going around them is a fatal gamble. At a tire shop, a mechanic works on a large truck tire lying on the ground. Without any warning, the tire explodes with incredible force, throwing the mechanic through the air. This catastrophic event is why inflating large tires requires strict safety protocols. Overpressurization or damage to the tire's structure can turn it into a bomb. All large tires must be inflated inside a reinforced safety cage, which is designed to contain the explosive energy. Workers should never lean or stand directly over a tire as it is inflated. At a loading dock, a forklift operator begins to raise the forks. At that exact moment, a scooter carrying two people drives directly into their path, colliding hard with the rising steel forks. This incident highlights the chaos of a poorly managed work zone. There is a severe lack of situational awareness from both the scooter driver and the forklift operator. Industrial yards require clear, designated pathways for vehicles and pedestrians, good lighting, and for all personnel to remain alert. In a poorly lit workshop, two men are working on the floor near what appears to be a compressed gas cylinder. Suddenly, it explodes in a massive fireball. Gas cylinders are potential bombs if mishandled. They must always be stored upright, secured from falling, and inspected for damage before use. A man operates a large industrial lathe, leaning over the rapidly spinning chuck. His loose jacket sleeve gets snagged, and he is instantly and violently pulled into the machine, spinning at a terrifying speed before a coworker hits the emergency stop. This is a classic entanglement accident. The number one rule when working with rotating machinery is absolutely no loose clothing, untied long hair, or jewelry. These items can be grabbed in a fraction of a second. Additionally, a chuck shield could have prevented this contact. At a gas station next to a busy roundabout, a chaotic car accident occurs. One of the involved cars rolls backward, out of control, directly into the station forecourt, striking an unsuspecting attendant sitting in a chair. This incident underscores the risk of working near live traffic. Protective barriers, like bollards, are essential to shield work areas from errant vehicles. A large truck reverses toward a loading bay, while a pedestrian walks directly into its path from behind. The driver, with no visibility in this massive blind spot, continues backing up and runs the person over completely. This is a tragic and preventable blind spot accident. Large vehicles must be equipped with functioning backup alarms and cameras. Crucially, a dedicated spotter should always guide a reversing truck, maintaining constant visual contact with the driver. In a busy shipping yard, a man walks across the pavement while completely absorbed by his phone. He fails to notice an approaching forklift and steps directly into its path, getting struck and knocked down. This is a clear case of distracted walking in a high-risk environment. Using a phone while walking in an active yard with heavy machinery should be strictly forbidden. Pedestrians must maintain full situational awareness at all times. A mechanic performs welding work underneath a car on a lift. Sparks from his tool ignite a flammable liquid on the floor, likely spilled fuel, and the vehicle erupts into a massive ball of fire. The mechanic is forced to scramble to safety from the inferno. This is a failure of hot work safety procedures. Before any welding or grinding, the area must be completely cleared of all flammable materials, including liquids, vapors, and oily rags. A fire extinguisher must be within arm's reach, and it is also standard practice to disconnect the vehicle's battery. At a paper mill, a worker tries clearing a jam from a large industrial roller. Suddenly, he's violently pulled into the machine. This is a classic failure of lockout-tagout. Power must be cut and locked out before maintenance. A tow truck has parked with its steel winch cable stretched taut across a residential street. A scooter rider, completely unaware of the nearly invisible hazard, drives at speed directly into it. He is violently clotheslined and thrown from the bike. This is gross negligence. Any cable stretched across a public way must be made highly visible with flags and cones, and the area should have been completely blocked off from traffic. In an auto repair shop, a mechanic carefully guides a pickup truck into a service bay. The driver suddenly accelerates instead of braking, pinning the worker against the wall. This shows the inherent danger of being in a vehicle's path. Spotters must always maintain a safe distance and have a clear escape route. Inside a textile factory, workers stand near a massive thread winding machine where hundreds of threads are fed at high speed. One worker gets too close, and a thread snags his clothing, violently pulling him off his feet and dragging him toward the intake rollers. This machinery presents a severe entanglement risk. Proper machine guarding is essential to create a barrier between workers and moving parts. Additionally, loose clothing should never be worn, and emergency stop controls must be clearly marked. An instructor and a child ride a tandem zip line over a deep ravine. Suddenly, the child slips completely out of their harness. The instructor heroically manages to grab and hold on to the child as they speed down the line. This is a shocking failure of pre-ride safety protocols. All harnesses, carabiners, and safety lines must be inspected and double-checked before every single use. A forklift loads a stack of heavy industrial tires onto a truck bed, where another worker is waiting. The load is unstable and suddenly topples over, crushing the man beneath its immense weight. This is a fatal mistake of being in the line of fire. Workers must never be under a suspended or unstable load. The load should have been stacked securely, and workers should clear the area during lifting operations. A man enters a hardware store, grabs a can of flammable liquid, and immediately starts a fire in an aisle. This isn't a workplace accident, but a deliberate act of arson. For any business, this shows the importance of having multiple, clearly marked fire extinguishers, unobstructed emergency exits, and a well-rehearsed evacuation plan.